There we go.
Hey, sports fans, you know what time it is. That's right. We got the sign back, PB&Z Sports Chaos Show. And guess what? This week we're going to talk about the best division of football, the NFC East. And you know why I say that, right, PB? Hey, first though, do you remember this show, TWIB, This Week in Baseball?
Oh yeah, I do. With that,
Well,
wasn't it Mel
yeah,
Ott?
Mel
No,
Summerall. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Mel
yeah.
Ott was the voice. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we're going to have a little This Week in Baseball because guess what? We had our fourth no-no of the season this past week, right?
Yeah, by Lorenzen.
Mike, Mike No Renzen. That's what they call him out down there now.
Yeah, and he was a recent trade. He came from Detroit. Now he's on Philly, trying to
That's
make
right.
the playoffs, right?
That's correct. First home game playing for in the second start for the Phillies, and he pitches a no hitter. Hey, meanwhile, here in Boston, the Hein Bloom fallout continues. More to come on that when the season ends. Hopefully, he gets fired the day after that. PB, the biggest news besides we're going to talk NFL, but college football. This whole I mean, what's going on right now is just crazy. And the ACC wants to try to bring in two schools from the West Coast, Stanford and Cal. That's ridiculous. 3,100 miles BC would have to travel to a Cal game. That's
That
nuts.
it doesn't even make sense. No.
No, I mean, you can football maybe, but what about the other sports? You're going to go to play softball 3,100 miles away and then come back and play the home game 3,100 miles away? Stupid.
Makes no
Just
sense at all.
ridiculous. And
Yeah.
by the way, the Pac-12 is now down to 4 teams. So what? The Pac-4?
A four pack. A four pack.
Oh my!
A four pack
A
of
four
12.
pack, yeah, like a 4 pack league. That's a good. We're gonna have to promote that. The 4 pack league.
Right.
Nice. All right, let's get to the NFC. As I said, it's the most exciting division of football because you got America's team and you got the city of brotherly love.
Yep. Yep.
And then you got the Giants and the whatever they call the Washington something or other. Oh, Commanders. That's what they are this year. That's right.
Yeah.
All right. Speaking of them, let's start with the worst team in that division. In my mind, easily
Yeah.
the worst team. The
Yeah.
Nothings. They got a
Yeah.
pretty good defense, right? They drafted two guys with defense, Emmanuel Forbes and Jatavius Martin, a corner and a safety. What do you
Yep.
think of this team?
Which is important because we know their defensive line is already top three, top five unit in the NFL. So
Yeah,
they got the defensive line. Now they add to the backfield. They're kind of going to be they're kind of like the Patriots in a way. Like their defense is going to win them some games, but on paper they're kind of crappy. You're kind of like the Patriots. So Sam Howell, what's he going to be like this year as the starter at quarterback, and then you have Jahan Dotson, the second-year receiver. You still have McLaurin there. Their running backs, okay. I wouldn't put any one of them in a class of a top tier running back. So I don't see this team offensively being able to do much, but defensively they'll stay in some games. But then couple that with the division that they're in. They got to play Dallas and Philly twice, right?
Yep.
And then they have to go on the road and play teams like Denver. They even have to come to New England. They got to go to Seattle. The home games, San Francisco, you got to lay them in there. Buffalo at home as well. This team's going to struggle to win games. Their over is 6.5 in Vegas, which I was surprised about. I don't think this team can win 7 games. I think this is an under all day long. As a matter of fact, I only have them at 4 wins. I got them at 4 and 13.
PB, I'm with you because they got Arizona, Chicago, Atlanta, and maybe they split with the Giants, and that's about it. And you got Atlanta winning the division, so they probably don't even get that game in your mind. Probably, this team is. I'm going to say 2 and 15 could be realistic for them. I'm going to go 4 and 13, close to the Vegas line, but 2 and 15 may be reality for these guys.
Yeah, they could be fighting for that first round overall pick, right?
They should be. Yeah. Hey, by the way, you mentioned the Pats. I think the Pats have a better wide receiver group than this, and as bad as the Pats wide receivers are, right?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't. I mean, Terry McLaurin's a top level wide receiver, and then Jahan Dotson showed some signs.
Yeah. No, I took Devontae and Juju over them though. So we'll talk about Pats when we do AFC East. Let's talk about New York Giants though. Here's another team. What are they 7.5 on the over under?
They're 7.5 on the over under.
I don't know where that's coming from, but okay.
Believe it or not, I like the under on that. I do have them at 7 wins, which is kind of pushing it. They too have a tough schedule, tough division, right? They got to play Dallas twice. They got to play Philly twice, just like Washington. They got to go to San Francisco. They got to go to Miami and Buffalo in back-to-back weeks. That's tough, right? They have the Jets at home. Then they have to go 3 road games in a row here at Vegas, at Dallas, at Washington. There's another team that I can see, couple that with their bad offensive line. this team is one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL. And now you're relying on, Daniel Jones is going to have to probably run a lot and be flushed out of the pocket a lot. And then how does Barkley get the holes he needs to run the ball effectively? So
and you say the offensive line. Speaking of that, the second round pick Schmitz is probably going to start at center for them, right? So,
right. And that's despite drafting Neal, who was a top pick last year for them. They got Neal and Thibodeau in the first like 6 or 7 picks they had in the draft last year. I do like their D line. I mean, I think their D line is decent. O line struggles, offense struggles. Daniel Jones could help carry this team a little bit, but outside of him and Saquon, it's gonna be tough to find wins.
I don't know. Danny Dimes, he's way overpaid, first of all. I don't think he's going to live up to that paycheck.
I agree. That's what I'm saying. Can he take a team on his back? Because we know that wide receiver room is hurting as well, right?
Yes, that's another tough wide receiver room. Jalen Hyatt, the kid from Tennessee, they drafted in the 3rd round, maybe their best player at wide receiver.
He could be, right? And Waller obviously could make a difference if he stays healthy.
Best overall pass catcher on the team. Yeah, we're done.
Yeah.
So right. What do you, all right.
So I came up with 7 wins. It's under the 7.5. I could see them easily winning 5 or 6 as well. But I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt because they, did some good things. Dayball's a good coach. I got him at 7 and 10.
Wow. So I'm looking at Arizona, maybe New England. Arizona definitely they should win. New England, maybe split with Washington, right? That's 3. Rams, maybe they get to go on the road with Vegas, but it's on the road. New Orleans. I got this team 6-11 at best.
Right.
So I'm under.
Yeah, I'm under 2, but just barely. But like I said, I would push. I can see them going 6-11 or 5-12 more than I could see them going, 8 and 9.
Oh, agree. Because this is a team that made the playoffs last year, right?
Right, and they did make the playoffs last year, so they do have a little bit of a harder schedule because of that, and I think their road stretch, that road stretch, 3 out of 4 games at Frisco, at Miami, at Buffalo, and then 3 games in a row at Vegas, at Dallas, at Washington. That's like a killer right there.
Oh, Giants fans, Lagori, Jensen, if you're watching, you guys are gonna be sucking wind this year.
You got them 6-11 then?
I do, yeah.
All
right. Let's go to the South. Let's go to Dallas, Texas. They drafted a tight end, Luke Shoemaker, replaces Darren Schultz. I like that pick. Defensive tackle, Mazzie Smith. They needed somebody in the interior. I think he's going to be a stud for them. And the guy I really love that they drafted, and I talked about this in our draft show, Deuce Vaughn in the 6th round is going to be the offensive rookie of the year. That's my prediction.
Wow. Interesting. And this team, yeah, I mean, their offensive line seems healthy, obviously anchored by Zach Martin. I love the
way they got to sign Zach Martin, right? He's still holding out at this moment, right? That's a big problem. And the signs are not positive.
Right. That changes everything if he's not on the field. But with him and with the rest of the O-line healthy, this is to me a top 5 offensive line unit. And you put Tony Pollard now, the explosive runner that he is, and Dak and those weapons, they have Cooks now who can stretch the field. Obviously CeeDee Lamb is a stud. And then their D line, because I mean, you look at the trenches, right? So the defensive line as well, top 10 unit, probably. Micah Parsons on the edge. And I think this team has the trenches, right? The offensive and defensive lines, both top 10 units, which is sometimes hard to find in the NFL. And then you look at their weapons offensively. I think this team can win a lot of games. I was surprised it's 9.5 in Vegas right now. I think
by the way, Brandon Cook's a good signing in the offseason. He's going to open up some holes for CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah, he'll open up holes for CeeDee and can stretch the field as well. So yeah. I like the over here. Definitely, I think they can win 10 games. I actually have them at 11-6. And I think this is the key. If one of these 2 teams, if either Dallas or Philly sweeps one another, then that team will win the East. And I think Dallas is capable of sweeping Philly. And if they do, they win the East instead of Philly. If Philly sweeps Dallas, obviously Philly will win the division. I mean, that's obvious. If they split, I think it's going to be wide open down the stretch. They'll be neck and neck. But I got Dallas 11-6.
I got these guys between 15-2 and 10-7. But hang on, I'll tell you where I'm going to go with this in a second. The toughest games, you just mentioned Philly. I think they split with Philly. I don't think they sweep. They got to go to San Fran, which has been their curse the last couple of years, right, in the playoffs. They got to go to Miami. That's going to be a tough game as well. They got to go to the Chargers. That's going to be a shootout. They got to go to Buffalo. That's going to be a tough game. They get Detroit, they get Detroit at home.
Good.
Yeah.
Buffalo will be in December too, so that'll be a
Yeah.
quick, yeah.
They got Detroit and they got the Giants, which for whatever reason, they always seem to only split with the Giants. But I got a bold prediction. I got them going 13-4.
Okay. And winning the division?
Well, we'll see. Let's talk about Philadelphia next. Hey, by the way, Philadelphia, they lost some players from the Super Bowl team, right? They took off in free agency, but these guys really actually a pretty good draft. By the way, they drafted everybody from Georgia. They got defensive tackle Jalen Carter, linebacker Nolan Smith, cornerback Kaylee Ringo, which I think you and I both had going high, and he ended up getting down in the third round to these guys. That's a steal for them, right?
Mhm.
And running back, they signed free agent DeAndre Swift, right, from Detroit.
Right. Yeah.
They
And I mean,
plugged in some holes.
yeah, they did. And me and you could probably run behind that offensive line. So
Yeah.
I think that all recipe for great things.
It all rests on whether Hurts improves, I think. I mean, he had a great year. Don't get me wrong. He had a great year, but can he take the next step?
Right. That's a big question. Their offensive line and defensive line, I think, are both ranked 1 in the NFL, which is so rare to have your top offensive line and a top defensive line. And then you say, well, what do the skill players look like? Well, they got good skill players too, because they have a guy like Jalen Hurts who can run around like crazy. Then you add onto that AJ Brown at receiver. Devontae Smith is probably the best wide receiver 2 in the NFL. Could be the best wide receiver 2 in the NFL.
And Quez Watkins is a third. It's not a bad third, right?
Right. And then you got like you said, you got DeAndre Swift, who can also catch the ball in the backfield. So he's another weapon in the receiving game too. So, and Goddard, the tight end, he's a top 5, top 8, maybe tight end. So this team is loaded. And the only thing that I'm going to put against them is the Super Bowl loss hangover and the fact that no team has repeated in this division in like 20 years.
Yeah.
And I just have a feeling that curse is going to kind of linger and hang out there. I have this team at the same record as Dallas, 11-6. Their under over is 11.5, which is right kind of on the money. So they both tie at 11-6. And like I said, the team that sweeps each other wins. If they split each other, it's going to come down to tiebreakers, because I think these two teams finish at both 11-6.
I got them split. And by the way, the week 1 game, speaking of the hangover, right? You get the hangover. There's going to be a lot of festivities, even though they didn't win the Super Bowl. I'm sure there's going to be some festivities pregame. They got a trap game in week 1 at New England, right?
Right. At New
That's
England.
a huge trap game.
Right.
Then they
Belichick could dial up.
Yes.
Belichick could dial up a defensive scheme that could just make them look hapless,
I mean, the Pats usually start out pretty well. So, plus they get tough games against Minnesota. They got to go to the Jets against Rodgers, right? They've got Miami. Fortunately, it's at home for them, but they still play Miami's tough game. They got to go to KC. They got to play Buffalo, but fortunately, it's in Philly. They got to play San Fran and Philly. Seattle's going to be a tough game for them going out to Seattle. And of course, you got the Dallas, as we just talked about, and the Giants, which can the Giants, I mean, that division always seems to have somebody beating somebody, right?
Yeah.
I get these guys, I got them a little better than you. I got them 12-5.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, that would be big. 13-4 Dallas, 12-5 Philly. That would be, wow.
That means I got the Cowboys. I told you, the best division of football, other than the Giants and Washington.
Yeah, I mean, I got them tied at 11-6, so I think they're both solid teams. And
so if they tie at 11-6, who wins the division?
Well, it would come down to tiebreakers.
And then who do you think it is then?
If they split each other, it would be based on the whole, common opponents and everything else. I don't know. I'd have to go through it with a fine tooth comb, but I'm gonna say Dallas, just because I think Dallas will win the bigger games that they need to, and Philly's gonna maybe tank, one of those. But all that being said, I think these two teams, coupled with maybe San Francisco, we'll see what Seattle looks like. They could be a little sleeper, but those should be your NFC Championship game teams between Dallas, Philly, San Francisco. To me, those two teams are the class of the NFC right now.
It's funny. It's 2 divisions, right? Only going to be a factor here in the NFC.
Yeah, the South and the North should probably be non-factors. Yeah,
I would think so.
Detroit could surprise us, but I don't know.
All right. Let's go Cowboys, America's team. All right. PB, good one. We'll do AFC East next. Take care. Have a good weekend.
All right, you too, man.